Good to see you, Stu.
Hello there, David.
You know, I'm going to tell you right now, like a reverend, I am filled with fire and brimstone today.
I know it. I saw it when I walked in.
The only difference between this reverend and that scumbag, Al Sharpton, I don't make things up. I don't make up fake rape cases. I don't use race to profit.
What was her name?
Tawana Brawley.
Tawana Brawley.
I do not try to victimize a hero.
Yeah.
And one of the most, this case has really captured and divided New York City. This is the Daniel Penny case, because a lot of us are sick and tired of riding in subways and feeling unsafe after we've had
Walking on the streets.
20 to 30 years of calm and peace through policing that included the broken windows theory, which was eliminated by these progressives. And
it's sick.
Right. It's really sick.
The turnstiles, getting on buses, and that justifies more, and that encourages other people to do likewise.
Exactly. And this is one of the many negative afterthoughts of this DEI BLM disaster. But a jury in New York spoke, and they found Daniel Penny, who assisted people on a subway who were being threatened and felt threatened by Jordan Neely, a mentally ill homeless man, and he unfortunately died in a chokehold. We don't know exactly what caused his death.
Correct.
Because it was unclear to the jury, as it is to me, what brought it all on, because the guy had drugs in his system, and, you know, God knows.
And the medical examiner had called it a homicide before she saw what the drug situation.
Right, because she was part of the progressive BLM, would nail these white men and put them in their place and put them in jail, even though the crime was not even here. And a lot of people were very critical of this case. And what happened on the last Friday was that the jury could not reach a verdict on the higher charge of manslaughter, and the judge was going to declare mistrial, which was what was the procedure, and then the whole case would have had to be retried. And then Alvin Bragg and his team asked the judge to dismiss the manslaughter charge after a verdict had already been reached, which is unheard of, so that they could continue to pursue the lesser charge, criminally negligent, because they were determined to get a verdict against a Marine, a veteran, a respectable citizen who no one had a negative thing to say about. Well, on Monday, within less than an hour or so, the jury came back with a not guilty verdict, and this entire case is another slap in the face to Alvin Bragg and his failed policies. He came into office on day one and said he wasn't going to prosecute a number of crimes. And then, lo and behold, it's not only his fault, let's be clear, but, you know, crime in the city is now back to being an issue, and people on the subway are threatened by people like Alvin Bragg. And Daniel Penny had to step in because our public officials, one, they let Jordan Neely slip through the cracks, as well as many others. And two, they do not police. They are encouraging this violence.
These cops are not, in a way, authorized to do what they used to be able to do. And they're not, and they don't feel supported by any kind of administration. That they could end up, they feel, I talk to these guys, they could end up, they feel, being the defendant instead of the perpetrator.
Exactly. And, you know, there's more. The story still hasn't really ended, because outside the court, there were the BLM, Al Sharpton crowd. One of the BLM rascals, he was involved in this, but I don't know if he was actually there. He did condemn vigilante justice, which, I mean, for someone who likes to take to the streets and encourage people to violence, he's the last person who should be making that comment.
Look, there's no question, and this has been said, there's no question that homelessness and mental insufficiency is a serious problem. And the answer to the mental deficiency portion is to keep people confined unless and until they're able to be secure on the streets and not a threat to themselves or to others. It's that simple. They shouldn't be allowed to harass and threaten other people.
Well, it isn't that simple for libtard America and the white Manhattan liberals who elect people like Alvin Bragg to office. They are the dumbest people I know, and they think they're smarter than everyone else. But there's more to this story, Stu, than that. I mean, first of all, Jordan Neely's history is a troubled one. He was 14 years old. His mother was murdered. He witnessed an abusive boyfriend stuffing her remains into a suitcase, and he had to testify to that effect as a young man, and he suffered from PTSD and all kinds of mental health issues as a consequence of this trauma at 14 years old.
And he was abandoned by the father at 2 years old.
Well, yes, and the father never stepped up, never did anything to help him, even after his mother died. And Jordan went through foster care until he was 18, and then he was dumped out of the street. The father never lifted a finger. His name is, I think it's Andrea Zachary. Okay.
Here he is now.
Right.
Saying, I miss my boy.
And how the system is rigged. And not only that, he is pursuing a lawsuit against Daniel Penny. So he wants to profit off the death of the son he didn't even raise and created. He created this mental health menace.
That's true.
And he ruined his own son's life.
Then I read when Neely was beginning his theatrical career on the subways doing the
Michael Jackson
effort to reprise his work, when Jordan refused to share some of the proceeds that he was making on the subway, I read that his dad threw him out of the house.
Yeah, I don't think the father ever really had any involvement with him.
Now he's upset.
Right, now he's upset. Of a son, the son didn't even have his surname. He took his mother's name. Obviously, because the father was an absentee landlord, and he, in collaboration with Sharpton and his crew, are bringing back another fraudulent lawsuit. And, I guess they're thinking of similarly what happened with Bernard Goetz, who was also acquitted of the serious charge of, I think it was murder or manslaughter, but had a gun charge that sent him to prison. He was also involved, and they sued Bernard Goetz, and they got a judgment, but Goetz just declared bankruptcy. So I guess what happened is the civil judgment was never really paid off. But a lot of people are comparing Daniel Penny to Bernard Goetz, but there really isn't a comparison because
this guy's stepping up to defend other people.
Right. And Bernard Goetz was also a troubled person. Had been persecuted on the subway in a similar time during New York City where crime had run rampant because of liberals. Now, the father should be convicted for child abuse and for his malfeasance as a parent.
Yes.
And I heard Daniel Penny's lawyers on TV listening to them, and they're planning to go after Bragg and his office for malicious prosecution. Now, I'm not sure.
I don't think that'll hold water.
Probably not, because you have to prove malice. But I think Alvin Bragg has demonstrated behaviors that shows a malice towards white Americans.
Let me add something to this.
Yes.
Other person in the story, and it's the one who is the prosecuting attorney.
Oh,
her name, Daphne Yoret. Now she has an interesting history. In 2018, there was a case where a guy named Matthew Lee, a black guy, mugged an 89-year-old professor from Lehman College and took $300 from the fellow. The professor was a Korean. Hits the Korean in the back of his head. The guy falls to the ground, dies soon thereafter. Yoren sought a lesser sentence than would otherwise be appropriate, saying that this was an opportunity for a transformative outcome. And that was the first time that theory had been put forth and had been suggested by a number of attorneys, district attorneys, but that transformative outcome. And so she was pushing for something, and he eventually only got 10 years. This guy who killed the Korean guy, hitting him on the back of the head. And he only got 10 years when otherwise he ordinarily would have gotten possibly up to life. So, I mean, that lady was here prosecuting this trial. You know what her...
Was this even before Alvin came into office? Or was this... So she's part of this she shouldn't be a prosecutor. She should go and defend criminals because that's what she's doing. And frankly, she vigorously pursued the case, but he was actively involved in this because he is worried about a challenge in the Democrat primary. He wants to keep his job. Now, there's been further discussion of removing him from office again. There was when he did the day one memo and Kathy Hochul said, no, I'm not going to overturn the will of the voters. I think even Eric Adams said, it wouldn't be right to remove him. I don't trust white Manhattan liberals to vote appropriately. They don't have the competence, the mental competence to vote responsible people into all this. Voting for Alvin Bragg is like putting a gun to your head.
Depends on your choices.
Well, these people shouldn't be allowed any choices because they're that dumb. I don't even think they have the capacity to function in society. If you're voting for your own suicide, that's all I can say. And this is and Alvin Bragg is one. I'm going to go so far as to say I think he's even worse and more disgusting than that horror show, Bill de Blasio.
This is a big step.
This guy should be investigated by the Justice Department for prosecutorial misconduct. He should be investigated for collaborating with Sharpton, who is a charlatan and a crook. And the Justice Department, it is about time someone started investigating Sharpton, his money-making ways, his not-for-profit, which I'm sure is...
That's for another day.
But these people all need to be routed out. And the good news in the end of this, though, Stu, is the BLM prosecutions, the soft on crime, New Yorkers, even the New York jury at least, are not standing for it. And Trump increased his margins in a lot of districts in New York because of these policies. I don't think Alvin Bragg has gotten the message. The only message the only call he has is to the Sunday machine so he can fill his fat gut up with more slop and be he's like Henry VIII of the left. I mean, it's disgusting. The only thing is, I don't think he has like a good personality either. He's just a humorless, hypocritical, entitled brat who lived a life of privilege, who's now riding on this mantle of racial animus. And it's a total charade. So it doesn't surprise me. I want to know how many times he met with Sharpton. What were they doing together to collaborate on this travesty of justice? And this guy, Penny, they have marked him. Even one of the demonstrators was like, "We know where you live."
Yes,
sick. That guy should be arrested for threatening someone with violence.
Not enough to.
Probably not. But if the Democrats can use the adversarial system to go after people, I think I'm glad Trump is I don't think he's going to follow through on my hope, but I hope they go after these people because they need to be shut down. They are a danger to our society. Alvin Bragg should not be allowed to practice law. He is unethical. He is repulsive in every way and fat.
Well, thank you very much.
But at least we have hopeful signs that the end of this BLM nightmare and the ridiculousness that it has perpetrated has come to an end. And I think if anyone should be getting a statue in Union Square Park, it should not be George Floyd, a felon who was caught counterfeiting money and committing a crime when he ran into the police trouble. I think Daniel Penny should be getting the statues. He is a hero. Not George Floyd.
I think you're right.
But, there are examples in our society, very few left, unfortunately, of people who have character and integrity. And,
I got one.
I know you did.
A story about a guy, and it's interesting. I'm not calling this fellow a hero in any way, but it's an interesting story. There's a fellow named Jake Retzlaff. Let me put my glasses on just in case. Do you know who that guy is?
No, I haven't heard this one.
Okay, he's the star quarterback of the Brigham Young University football team.
Okay.
Junior, 21 years old, led them to a great record, a bowl game coming up. And he'll be probably a draft candidate after the 2025 season. So you say, well, so what? What's the story? Well, he's the only Jewish quarterback in major college football today. And only one of 3 Jewish students at Brigham Young University.
That's surprising.
Now, his story, it gets me. His story has resonated with fans, Jewish and not. But not only because of his athletic prowess, but because of his public embrace of his Jewish identity. Last year, he led the city of Provo, Utah. He led the city in its first public Hanukkah memorial lighting. I thought that was interesting. And he wears a Star of David necklace around campus and is taken on the nickname of BY-Jew, BY Jew. Now, you'd say, what? It's interesting. And now there's a business twist. Manischewitz. And food. They've been around since 1888. They see something here. And as well as most of the listeners, I'm sure, that now supposedly amateur athletes in college are free to make money off of their name, their likeness, and their image. And colleges and alumni are, recruiting certain people and giving them money in a big way. And no longer is it a very amateur-like world at the top level of college football. But Manischewitz is interested in him, and they're going to have special edition boxes of matzah. A box. Well, they have the box is like a Wheaties box.
But with he's
going to be on the matzah box.
So he's going to be the Bruce Jenner of his generation.
I hope not.
Well, at least in one respect, right?
But you're exactly right that Jenner was on there and deserved to be at the time. He was a decathlete, possibly the greatest athlete in the world at the time. And Michael Jordan was on a Wheaties box. And I'm not comparing this guy to them.
No.
But you're right. He'll be on a box. Now, this is going to be matzah. And it's not going to be sold. It's going to be given away, apparently. And matzah, for those who don't know, is it's unleavened bread. And it's mostly known for its use during the particularly important holiday of Passover for Jews, which celebrates the exodus of Jews from slavery in Egypt. And there's a video coming out or already in existence showing him eating and signing sheets of matzah.
Oh, my God.
Now, but this is what I like the best. He says, look, I grew up with matzah and peanut butter as my favorite snack. And every Passover, my family and I made matzah pizza and potato latkes together. We won't get into that. But here's what I love. He says, now at BYU, I'm able to share these traditions with my teammates. This partnership is about more than football. It's about creating connections and celebrating Jewish pride in ways I never expected. I just think it's not just a business story. It's a touching story. And I wonder what would happen if he turns out to be of real quality as a quarterback at an NFL level. Someone like that could become an international figure in international relations with, state of Israel. I know I'm projecting, but
no. I mean, I think one of the interesting twists is we saw last year what happened on all these Ivy League and elite universities,
yes,
where Jewish students were being persecuted by pro-Hamas anti-Semites who were either students or outside demonstrators. And here we are at BYU, a Mormon school, where it's a very homogenous kind of place, and this guy is being embraced. And a liberal would condemn a school like BYU for the qualities I just mentioned, and they hold these places like Harvard and the like in esteem.
And the menorah lighting in Provo.
Yeah, exactly.
Lighting in a public stadium or wherever it was in a city facility. I just think that's really, it's got humanity.
No, I think it's a good story, Stu, and it's a positive story. He's a college graduate and a college student or a promising athlete who might have a future.
Yeah.
And he's being embraced by a fairly conservative environment that many liberals would refer to as, racist and anti-Semitic, even though they're the worst anti-Semites out there lately.
Mormons have certainly suffered there.
Right.
They've certainly been abused in the past.
Although I will say we would have been far better off with Mitt Romney as our president than that horror show Barack Obama, who was a terrible.
Had so much quality, he just didn't have any panache.
No.
Pizzazz.
And he also had the media against him.
Yes.
And the Obama machine, which is now been has been damaged
I
by
was a
this.
fan of his for when he was trying to get the presidency.
I wasn't a big fan, but
I was. I don't know that he was the only one I cared about, but I thought he'd be a respectable candidate.
I agree. I just wanted to see Obama defeated. Unfortunately, wasn't. And he was not a good president, but God knows he was nowhere near as bad as Joe Biden. On another story, we have a story about another college student who came.
Oh, yeah.
Luigi Mangione, one of my people, actually, came from a prominent family. He was the valedictorian of his high school class.
I went to school in Baltimore.
Right.
It's a prominent private school.
Right. He went to the University of Pennsylvania. He got degrees in science. He was in the class above my daughter, but she did not know him personally. And he seemed to be on a trajectory of success.
God, yes.
And a trajectory of, like a promising life. Now, something happens to, and this guy, they claim he had a medical injury.
He has serious back issues, and I don't doubt that that's the truth. But the lady I go out with has been suffering with pain.
You don't go around killing people, right?
Years.
Right.
So
the thing that leads me to what's so strange about this case, he obviously targeted this U.S. healthcare executive who was, I think his name was Brian Thompson. He was from a humble family from Iowa.
Yes.
He made great success of his life. He was a CEO of a healthcare company. Now, because he is involved in healthcare, a lot of people online have applauded what this guy did because they're so angry at the healthcare industry. But who went in and manipulated our healthcare industry in an effort to make it better? That was Obama and the Democrats with that disastrous Affordable Care Act, which really has made things worse.
Wait, though.
No, I'm not gonna veer you off, but the point of the matter is Pocahontas Warren was on the TV news and she was talking about this case, and she goes, well, when you push people to their limits, this is what can happen. You're the one. You are the party that has tampered with our healthcare system. And the insurance companies donated a lot of money to Obama's campaign because they wanted a payoff from Obamacare. So who empowered the insurance companies? And our healthcare system is something that could be very angering, but it's not a justification.
Wait a minute. I was in law school in the 60s, and there was always a dislike and a hatred for insurance companies. I don't remember dislike of healthcare agencies at the time. I think that's grown with.
Right. But the question we have here is this boy, this young troubled person, or whatever you want to call him, he wrote in his manifesto that these people are parasites, they need to go. And he also wrote, and this is what I find a little suspicious, is that he said, I acted alone here, so don't even bother to waste your energy trying to do. I did this all on my own. I find that very self-serving and strange that you would put that down in writing. And I mean, maybe I'm getting paranoid from living in this society, but I wonder who radicalized this guy? I mean, something.
That's a fair question.
Something turned him into
not just the pain.
Right. It was more than the pain. I mean, clearly he may have had mental health issues that manifested himself later, because that often happens, with serious mental illness. It doesn't happen until you're older. But, he seems to have been radicalized. And he went to the University of Pennsylvania, and we were talking about, the anti-Semitic incidents. And as we recall, Liz McGill, the president, was forced to resign in disgrace after that performance before Congress, where she said, calling for the genocide of Jews may be actionable, but it depends on the context, as was that joke of a president at Harvard. The Columbia president fell, all these Ivy League presidents. Now, at Penn, I always thought my daughter received a good education, and she said she didn't feel like anyone was trying to radicalize her. But a professor in the English department at Penn, her name is Julia Alekseyeva, something like this. Okay. She went on social media and she said, I'm proud now to be a professor at Penn. And she is involved in teaching all kinds of radicalism. Now, this created an outburst also, and she apologized for her comments, but I don't think an apology.
An apology.
Yeah, you apologize for praising someone for murdering some guy with 2 kids because you don't like the healthcare and you're a Marxist. And why? She's an assistant professor, Stu. She is not tenured. She, like Liz McGill, apology is not good enough. She should be out. Why should people be paying $80,000 a year?
The apology doesn't suggest in this kind of situation that the person has changed his or her mind.
No.
As to the legitimacy of the comment. It's just, I apologize that I've made you feel bad.
She got caught with her radicalism. First of all, her reaction is like what you'd expect out of a 13-year-old. This is a tenured professor. I assume she has a PhD. It's a very immature, childish reaction. It's a lack of depth and intellectual depth. It's also just living in a vacuum, in a bubble of stupidity. And this is the kind of people they have at these schools. Now, I'm not suggesting this boy was radicalized at Penn because it doesn't sound like it, but it does seem that these schools have, and I do hope this is true, it is time for us to stop subsidizing these. I mean, all these Ivy League schools they are not-for-profit hedge funds. They have multi-billion-dollar endowments. They get huge amounts of money from the federal government. And all they do is create an atmosphere of hate, division, and do they really educate people? That's what anymore? I don't even know. And I mean, really, what do most of those kids do when they go there? I mean, despite all the radical talk, they all go work for consulting firms, investment banks. They're not creating like a class of intellects involved in public service. A lot of it, they just greedy, childish people who don't know anything about international affairs and in some cases about their own heritage, because some of these people are actually Jewish who are out protesting in favor of a terrorist group. It's a disgrace. But as far as this boy is concerned, Stu, I don't know exactly what's happened, and I don't know if we'll ever get the truth because I'm going to sound like Trump. I do believe something radicalized him, and we have not heard the answer yet.
I think that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it, actually, but I think it's a fair question. And the business of getting him back to New York, that won't take too long, and there's going to be no obstacle that I can tell.
Probably not. And don't worry, Stu. Alvin Bragg is pursuing this case vigorously, and our new police commissioner praised him for his vigorous prosecution. And it shouldn't surprise you that he is, because Luigi is white. If he was
this commissioner, the new one did?
Yeah, praised Alvin, Fat Alvin, because she was his cooperation in this case. Of course he'll pursue it. I mean, if it was Al Sharpton's son, he'd probably be getting like a one-way ticket to the Philippines. I don't really know of what Al Sharpton's family history is, but I do know it's about time he got put out of business. But on that note, Stu, this Luigi story is leaving me rather puzzled. It's a tragic statement on our society that someone of such promise turns to this kind of dark.
Can you imagine what his family's feeling?
It must be awful.
Must be, absolutely.
And unlike Jordan Neely's father, it sounds like his family was actually involved in his life.
Sure. But lately, in the last few months, they'd lost track.
Right. He disappeared. He went off the grid.
But then he had been living in Hawaii
for
some period of time with guys who said he's a wonderful kid, he's this and that.
Yeah, most of the people who knew him were positive about him. And a lot of people who were friends with him at college and the like won't even talk to the media. They're all mum. And including professors and the like, they won't respond to questions. Because I've read a number of stories when people have tried to get, what was he like? No one will say anything.
And the reason?
They probably don't want to be involved. Yeah. But it's also probably, if they knew him and he appears to be what he appears to us, which is perfectly respectable until he went nuts, right? Maybe they feel bad about the whole thing. It's a tragedy. And it's a sad statement about the sick state of our society. And, Elizabeth Warren, that disgusting liar, it's a disgrace that the people of Massachusetts would reelect someone like this. But these are the same people who still lord over the Kennedys. And I'll just leave it at that. Mm-hmm. But I think you have one little more,
I do.
Maybe a little less of a darker story to discuss.
I think this one is, I'll tell you what it's about. It's a quickie. There's a Let me just get this piece of paper out. There's the VFW, is the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And there are posts, as they're called, all over the country. I belong to one in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And one of them, outside of Denver, Colorado, has decided to open up a post within a prison. And it's in Sterling, Colorado, just outside of Denver. And it's a hardcore place. This is not Camp Fed, one of those things where you roll around in your comfort clothes and you drink wine or get the New York Times at the front desk kind of thing. And I wonder about it. I look forward to this as being a great experiment because there are, I'm guessing based on numbers I've seen, there are probably about, 8,000 guys, maybe some women as well, 8,000 guys in prison now at a federal or state level who served in combat. There is a certain degree of camaraderie and value in someone that has served in combat, I believe. And I think this kind of awakening in a prison could allow some guys, regardless of color, obviously, because in combat, everybody's blood is the same color. And I think this kind of awakening in a prison requiring discipline. They're not going to be getting brioche. They're not going to be getting served food and wine and all.
Not even the matzah?
No, they're going to be, they'll laugh, not even the matzah. Who knows, maybe. But they'll be together in a confined environment, but a positive environment. And who knows what can come out of that. I think this could be effective rehab because they themselves will believe that there's value in themselves. And there was a quote in the article I read in a VFW magazine about this opening, is written by a guy who has served time. And he says, and I think this captures it, we can be better than our mistakes. And I love that. And I think that's a wonderful idea for a prison. If they can turn this into a rehabilitative device without causing difficulties within, and if it combines blacks, whites, pinks, browns, whatever you got, I say, let's see where you can take this.
Well, it's got to be better than the current system where we just recycle people and don't rehabilitate them. And prisons today are not doing their job. For some, you lock them away forever, but for a good chunk of them, the goal is rehabilitation. And rehabilitation does not occur. They're just a revolving door.
I'm not going to differ with you there, but I've performed in prisons, taught in prisons, and these are tough places run by gangs, not because they want to be, not because the outsiders want it that way, but that's the way the world is when these toughies come in. They come from bad backgrounds mostly, and they're troubled backgrounds, and we're not talking about Cam Fed again,
Right.
Those guys who read the Times. It's a real problem, and you really have to do a lot of hard work just to save your own life and safety as an employee in the prisons. And rehabilitation should come. Hopefully you try, but boy, incarceration and punishment is first.
Well, yeah, it depends on the scenario, Stu. I think the kind of hardened criminals you're talking about are not probably going to be able to be rehabilitated. Some have, but it's not. But a lot of young people get thrown into prison with people like this, and then they don't really stand a chance.
That's where they ended up because of their conduct. Sure, I understand what you're saying, but it's not that simple to say, here, you 10 guys can do well.
No, I realize it's not that simple, but I think the prison culture that has not really been addressed is a sick one, and it's another example of, yes, there has to be punishment, but if you're going to start, there also has to be rehabilitation and letting these people out after they've been through kind of a sick system like that. It's not, they're going to, and a lot of them, the recidivism rate for ex-cons is very high.
Yes.
It's a failure on our society.
Is what put it on our society, and not at least,
you're talking about like when you were doing your performances in prison, you were dealing with some really revolting medium security
and not ultra security, but medium and high security places. But that's a lot of the population. And about a third is usually Hispanic, about a third is black, and about a third is white. And these guys often come from troubled backgrounds. They are destined to have problems. Are destined when you see those who are going in. And yeah, these places are often run in a practical way by gangs.
Well, I will note a positive prison story. Look how successful Martha Stewart has been since she got out of prison. But yeah, point well taken. And I know you've been on the inside, Stu.
I'll tell you 4 stories. I don't know if I've told them.
You told a couple, but there's a few more we need to hear.
Well, I've got.
And also, I do want to, what was I going to say? I forgot to mention this. I would never in my life ever drink Manischewitz. That is most disgusting stuff.
I understand. A lot of people feel that way, but I don't know if it's still, I know it's not in vogue. I don't know if they still make a lot of it.
I think they do, but
the matzah is part of Jewish life.
Well, Mazel Tov. It's you. But anyway, I guess we're finished for the day, Stu.
Oh, we're done.
And let's make the special announcement. Stu and I are going to Brooklyn for an old school Italian dinner.
I love it.
And we are going to be mafia tonight. Stu may even put on a leather jacket. I bet he doesn't own one.
Of course not.
I knew that. But anyway, until next time.
Yeah, next time.
Yep.
See ya.
Yep.